Introduction to vectors. Now we'll describe what a geometric vector is and how to represent a vector in that form. So that is our first part. I've written the definitions here, so go carefully through these definitions and try to understand what a geometric vector is. Geometric vector is represented by an arrow called a directed line segment. The length of the line segment represents the magnitude of the vector and the arrowhead points in the direction of the vector. So that is what a geometric vector is. So let me just draw an arrow first. Let's say this is my arrow, right? Now we say this is a geometric vector. Now, so we can represent this as an arrow which has a starting or the initial point, and let's say the initial point is A, and that is the terminal point, and we are calling that as B, right? So here this is our terminal point or the end point, right? Terminal point, and this is our initial point or the starting point, right? And this is the segment, right? Now segment has a direction, so that is a directed line segment. So that is how we get this word directed line segment. The segment represents the magnitude of A and B. Magnitude of A and B we write like this with absolute signs, right? And vector is always written with a bar on the top. So a simple bar can work for you, or a bar with an arrow, right? So that is how we'll represent a vector geometrically. So let's say if I say that there is a vector AB whose magnitude is 30 newtons, right? Let us say a vector AB. So let me write this here. So we have 30 newtons. That is the magnitude. And the direction is, for this vector, since I've drawn here, I will give it a direction which is north. This is for north, and let's say it is 40 degrees from east. So that could be a description of my vector AB shown here. So that could be a description for my vector. So if I say I have to represent a vector which is force of 30 newtons, and force is acting along the direction of north 40 degrees east, right? Then what I will do is, to represent it geometrically, I will plot it like this. I say, well, this is my east, so from east it is 40 degrees. So this angle here is 40 degrees. Do you see that? And the magnitude of this vector is 30 newtons. I say, well, I choose a scale, and my scale is 1 centimeter represents 10 newtons. So I got 3 centimeters here. So I got 1 centimeter, 2 centimeter, and 3 centimeters. So to represent a vector in this form, we need two things. First is the scale, right? So we say our scale is 1 centimeter equals to 10 newtons, right? So I have just added this example to make things more clear. So that's my scale. And this is the angle, and we'll get into the definition of how to provide angle for a vector, right? So we'll just take it for the moment. It means how many degrees from east. So north, it is in the direction north, 40 degrees of east, right? That is how it is. So that's how we show. Now let's look into the other things. So AB represents vector with an arrowhead on top from A to B, as I just described. A is the tail or the initial point, and B is the head or the terminal point, correct? Now I hope it's absolutely clear. Now when you write these bars with AB, it represents magnitude of the vector AB. So this is the vector magnitude of this vector is 30 newtons. So I can write here 30 newton. And the length represents the magnitude, right? So we're saying every centimeter here is 10 newtons. So 3 centimeters represents 30 newtons, correct? So that's how length of directed line segment indicates magnitude of the vector, and we write like this symbolically. So we write 2 bars, absolute value, AB vector, correct? So that is how. So absolute value of AB, so magnitude is always positive. Now, direction is described using main compass. And the directions are north, south, east or west, just as we used, correct? So you can think like this. So if you see a compass, always it points towards the north. So this is our north, right? By default, north is always in this direction. And this is our east-west. That is south for us. So if I have a direction like this, for example, and say this is my angle of 30 degrees, then how will I specify this direction? We say it is moving south from east, right? So I can write this direction as south 30 degrees of east. Do you see that? So that is a way to write in this form. Another form of mentioning this angle is bearings. So bearings provide direction moving clockwise from north, right? So that is bearings. So bearing of this angle is from north, what is the angle when we go clockwise? So from north the angle is 90 plus 30. So we say this is same as the bearing of, let's say this angle is beta. So we say this angle beta or bearing is 90 plus 30, 120 degrees. So you give, whenever you're writing bearing angles, you have to write 3 positions, right? So bearing of north is 0, 0, 0 degrees. Remember that. For east, it will be 0, 90 degrees. For south, it will be 180 degrees. And for west, it will be 270 degrees. So that's the bearing of angle, right? Anything in between, you need to measure the angle going clockwise from north. And that's how you get to bearing, right? So remember that part. So that's how you have to give bearing. So next question which I have taken, I'll show you how to represent vectors in this form, in geometric form. And then slowly we'll move to solving problems using geometric vectors, right? You'll see how convenient it is to use geometric vectors and solve a lot of application problems. I hope you understand that part. So thing to remember here is a vector can be represented geometrically with the help of a directed line. Initial point to final point gives us the direction. So your segment should start from the initial point. And here is an example where we are writing AB vector. Means from A to B. Vector has 2 parts, magnitude and direction. Magnitude is always positive and we write this in this absolute form, right? And directions can be given in 2 different ways for the time being. One is using the compass, directions east, west, north, south. How much off it is from east or how much off it is from west or whichever. Or we can give direction with the help of bearings. And the bearing angle is always measured from north going clockwise. And here is the bearing of north is always 0, 0, 0. And bearing of south is 180 degrees, correct? So that is kind of gist of geometric vectors. And let's move on and solve some problems, okay? And represent vectors in the form of geometric vectors. Thanks and all the best.